Hi, this is Krista at the Secret Yarnery. Today, Cal Day. We are just starting one day early because the video turned out to be a bit long. So we're just going to be doing the first 5 rows today. So that's going to be part 2 of the Cal. And the next, from row 6 to row 13, tomorrow. So grab your hook, grab your yarn, get a cup of tea, get comfy. Let's go! Cal time! So I've got all my things ready. I have my yarn from the top down to the bottom. I have my pattern printed out, my crochet hook. I am using natural cotton, which is a size 3 thickness. Recommended needle size is 4, so I'm using a 5mm hook. I have my scissors. A needle's handy if I need it, but I won't be needing it soon for this cowl part. And I also have printed off a really big chart. So this is available on our Facebook group. It's just a PDF download. This is the same chart that comes with Silky Turhorst's pattern. It's this pattern she has here. It's her chart, it's everything. I've just cut out each row so it's easier to keep track of where you are if you're new to charts. So if you know charts, then this is fine. And if you have a color printer, then these are alternating rows of red and blue. So that's very helpful. If you are new to charts, I suggest printing off this one because you can see, it's a lot easier to see what you're doing per row. So, and this is on our Facebook group. I will put a link in the description box below. So let's get started. So these are the symbols you're going to need to recognize for the chart. The biggest stitch is treble crochet, and it is basically a T with 2 sticks going across it. There's also double crochet, which is a T with 1 stick going across it, and then chain, which is just a little circle. Slip stitch, which is like a dot, and start is just a triangle. So this we're only going to see one time, and then the rest we're going to be looking for these symbols here. So row 1, and every row that you start, you're going to look for these dots. Well, for this one, we're going to start here where it says start, which is chaining, slip stitch, and then chain 4. So let's just do that. So get your yarn and make your slip knot. You don't need to leave a long tail because we're going to crochet over it and we're going to cut it off. So we don't need to use a needle for this one. So slip stitch onto your hook and chain 1, 2, 3, and 4. So we're going to chain 4 for our center ring. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And you're going to slip stitch that together. So you're going to slip stitch into the first chain. Oops. To make a ring. And I'm just holding it open with my thumb and my fingers so I can keep track of that center. Now it says chain 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4. So we'll chain 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now it says to put 2 double crochets into this first stitch, but for this first round we're going to be working everything into the ring. So don't worry about these stitches or putting them into your chains. Everything's going to go into the ring. So we're going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 double crochets, a chain 1, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 double crochets, and 1 treble crochet at the end. So we're going to start with a chain equivalent to a treble, and we're going to end with a treble. So let's do 5 double crochets into the center of the ring. Now take care to go into the ring. So you're going to wrap your yarn and go into the center of that ring and make sure your tail is curled over with your ring, so you're working over it at the same time. So 5 double crochets into the ring. 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now we're going to do our chain 1. Chain 1. And now our 5 going back along this side. 5 double crochets into the ring. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And 1 treble crochet, because that T has 2 sticks going across it, so that one is a treble crochet. So wrap your yarn twice and 1 treble crochet into the center of the ring, still going over your tail. So that is round 1 finished, or row 1 finished. And here is row 2. And how you're doing your chart for your row 2, or for all your rows, you're going to look for where the chains are, these circles. That's where you're going to be starting. So it says again to chain 4 and then 2 double crochet into that same stitch or the top of this first treble. You can tell that because how they're pointing. They're pointing into the same spot as where you did your chain. So for your chain and these 2 double crochets are in the same stitch, which is the top of the treble from the previous row. So let's just do this part here. Chain 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Turn your work. Now it's this first stitch right here, the top of that treble crochet. So our chain 4 and then our 2 double crochets into the same spot you made your chain 4, which is the top of the treble. So we did our chain 4, so turn your work. And 2 double crochets right into this first stitch. 2 double crochets. Because we turned our work, the top of the stitches are a little bit after the post. So here's the post, and over here is the stitch that goes along with the post. So now we're going to do 1 double crochet into each stitch going back to the chain 1 spot. So I just do one side. I do the beginning, then we'll do the side, then we'll do the end, we'll do the side, and we'll do the end. So kind of break it up into chunks. So now we're going to be doing the side. So not that, and we finished that. So we're going to be doing these stitches, which are double crochets, 1 into each stitch going up to the chain 1 spot. And there'll be 5 of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 1, oops. 2, 3, 4, and 5. So this stitch here, this is the one that you can skip because it also looks like, oh look, I'm finished, I'm going to go into my chain 1 spot. But just remember, the top of the stitch is a bit after the post, so that little hole there is a stitch. You got to go into that one. If your stitch count is off, go and check that you went into this stitch, because that one can be easily forgotten. So now we're at the chain 1 spot. The chain 1 spot, we're doing 2 double crochets, a chain 1, and 2 double crochets all into the same spot. And we know it's all into the same spot because they're touching at the bottom. So where they're touching at the bottom means you make them also touching at the bottom, which means into the same spot or the same stitch. It's on top of this little circle, which is a chain, so that means it's into the chain space, usually. So 2 double crochets into the big space here, 1 and 2, and our chain 1, and then 2 more double crochets into the same spot, 1 and 2. So that's this part finished. Now we're going to work back along the side, 5 double crochets, 1 into each stitch. So, and remember that the stitch is a little bit after the post. So these ones are easy to see. 3, 4, and the last one here is 5. Oh, my yarn's a bit splitty. Don't want that. There we go. Oh. Into the chain, so after the last stitch, into the chain, which is over here, into the first chain, we're going to do 2 double crochets and a treble crochet. It's a bit difficult to see, but it has 2 sticks going across the T. It's also a tiny bit taller, but 2 double crochets and a treble crochet into the top of that chain 4 of the previous round. So to get to your chain, I just kind of twist it up so I can see that V a little bit better. And I just poke in. I want 2 loops on my hook and 1 underneath. You can see that. 2 loops on your hook, and then that's where I make the spot. So 1 double crochet, 2nd double crochet, and then wrap your yarn twice for your treble. So with this pattern, you're going to end your rows just about always with a treble crochet, and you're going to start them just about always with a chain 4. So that is the end of row 2. Row 3, we start by looking for our chains. So they're here. It doesn't matter where they are on your pattern, or you just always look for the chains that start your row. So it says chain 4 and 1 double crochet into the same stitch, because that double crochet symbol, the T with the one line across it, is touching the first chain. So you're going to make the chain and that double crochet into the first spot, which is the top of your treble crochet, because that's how it lines up. So we'll do our chain 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Turn your work, and it's this first stitch here, that's the top of your treble. So you're going to make 1 double crochet into that stitch, the first one, and then chain 1, because there's a chain 1 here, and then a double crochet into the very next stitch. So 1 double crochet into the next stitch, and then chain 1, skip 1, double crochet, chain 1, skip 1, double crochet, all the way back until we get to this chain 1 spot again. So chain 1, skip 1, double crochet into the second stitch, chain 1, wrap your yarn, skip 1, so not into the next stitch, into the second stitch, double crochet. So we're making like these little windows. So we're going to chain 1. I know I haven't chained 1 because there's 2 loops on the yarn underneath my hook. Can you see those 2 loops? So if you've chained, there's only 1 loop under your hook. So that's how you can always know if you've chained or not. So skip a stitch into the second stitch, double crochet, chain 1, wrap your yarn, double crochet into the second stitch, which is also the last stitch before the chain one. Now into the chain one space, we're going to chain one, double crochet, chain one, double crochet, and chain one. So chain one, double crochet into the chain one space, so into that hole, double crochet, chain one, double crochet, chain one, and now we're over here. So into the very first stitch after the chain one, we're going to make a double crochet. So that means it's the stitch right after the first post. So right down in here is your first double crochet, and now you're going to do the same thing, chain one and skip a stitch into the second stitch, double crochet, chain one, wrap your yarn, skip a stitch, double crochet into the second stitch, chain one, wrap your yarn, double crochet into the second stitch, chain one, wrap your yarn, double crochet into the second stitch. So now we've made windows going all the way back along the last side. We have our chain left, and we always have to do something with our chain. So now we'll look at our pattern. It says chain one, double crochet and treble crochet into the chain. So chain one, wrap your yarn. I just turn that chain towards me a bit so I can poke my hook in. I just want to leave one strand behind and get the other two on my hook. So double crochet, wrap your yarn twice, treble crochet into the same spot, which is the top of that chain 4 of the previous round. So there is round 3 finished. And you can see we're starting to get a nice little shape. Row 4. So again, look for your chains. That's where you're going to start. So here's our chains on this side now. So chain 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Turn your work. 2 double crochets into the same spot as the chain 4, which is the top of your first stitch. So 2 double crochets into that very first stitch, that very first one there, right into the stitch. 2 double crochets, 1 and 2. 1 double crochet into the next stitch, and then 1 double crochet into the space, 1 into the stitch, 1 into the space, 1 into the stitch, 1 into the space, all the way back until we get to our chain 1. So we could do that. So into the space, the little windows you made, 1 double crochet, oops, get into the space, there we go, and then 1 into your stitch, 1 into the space, into your window, 1 into your stitch, oops, splitting yarn again, there we are, into the window, into the stitch, into the space, into the stitch, into the space, into the stitch, into the space. We're not quite at our chain 1 yet. Into the stitch, that's our last stitch before the chain 1 spot. You can see your chain 1s, the center of your shawl lines up. So just kind of stretch it out, take a look, make sure you don't want to get off center. You want to make sure that your center always stays true. And then check what we're supposed to do. So it says 2 double crochets, chain 1, and 2 double crochets all into the same chain 1 spot, because all those double crochets are touching at the bottom, which means you also make them touching at the bottom by putting them all in the same stitch or space. We're going to be putting them into a chain 1 space because it's right on top of that dot, not dot, circle. So into the space, 2 double crochets, 1, 2, and a chain 1, and 2 more double crochets into that same spot, 1 and 2. Now here's your first stitch, and remember that the stitch is a little bit on the other side of your post after it. So 1 double crochet into the stitch, 1 into the space, 1 into the stitch. My yarn's a bit splitty. Nope. If your yarn's splitty like mine, take your time because it'll look messy if you rush. There we are. And 1 into the space, 1 into the stitch. Oh, I did it again. Oh, there we go. 1 into the space, 1 into the stitch, 1 into the space, and the stitch, and the space, and the stitch, almost, into the space, and here's our last stitch, 1 into the stitch. My yarn's not behaving. Okay. Now we'll check the pattern, what it wants us to do into the chain of the previous row, or the previous row is 2 double crochets and 1 treble crochet into the top of that chain 4. So I'm going to turn my chain a bit towards myself so I can kind of see the stitch a bit better, and then poke my hook in, getting 2 loops on my hook, and then double crochet, so 2 double crochets and 1 treble crochet, so wrap your yarn twice into the same stitch, the same chain stitch. So there's 2 double crochets and a treble into the same spot. And that is the end of row 4. Here we are at row 5, so look for your circles, your chain stitches. They're here on this side for this row. So we're going to do 4 chains. 1, 2, 3, and 4, and turn our work. And it says to do 2 double crochets into the same stitch, the first stitch, so 2 double crochets. So that's that very first stitch at the bottom there, so 2 double crochets, 1 and 2, and then 1 double crochet into each stitch, going all the way back to the chain 1 space. So that's pretty easy. 1 double crochet into each stitch, going all the way back to the chain 1 spot. So this part I'll speed up because I know you know how to get into, I know you know how to make a double crochet into each stitch. Now remember, when you get to the chain 1 area, remember that this last stitch, the stitch is just a little bit past that post. So you still have 1 more stitch to go into. This one here is still a stitch. So make sure you don't drop that guy. Now you're at your chain 1 space. Chain 1 space, it says 2 double crochets, chain 1 and 2 double crochets into the chain 1 space. So 2 double crochets into that space, 1, 2, chain 1, 1, and 2 into the same spot. So we're just building that tip of our shawl, the part that's going to go down your back. And now it says 1 double crochet into each stitch going all the way to the end. So I'll speed this up too. So when you get to the end, remember that this stitch here, that little opening after the post, that's your last stitch. So make sure you go into that guy to finish it off. Now you have your chain left. So for your chain, it says, or the pattern, the chart says, 2 double crochets and a treble into the top of that chain to finish your row. So I'm going to turn up my chain a little bit towards me so I can see that V a little bit. And just poke my hook in. 2 loops on your hook, 1 double crochet, 2 double crochets, and 1 treble. So that's wrapping your yarn twice, all into the same spot to finish off this row. So I'm just going to pull up that loop. This is, I'm going to change my color for the next row. So that is the end of row 5.